Okay, so this is the Drupal usability meeting for December 13th, 2016. We have a lot of people on, and also even more people at Hubert Border Media in Berlin. Meeting. So we are working on improving all kinds of media things and hopefully getting media features into core. And there's a lot of other topics that we'll tackle first while we are preparing our demos. So let's start.
Okay, so I have I just wanted to just kick off and show that I'm going to provide some SVG icons for the media library that I am working on right now. I'm just going to share my screen real quick, and I just want to validate that I'm taking the right approach here. But basically. So here's my big Illustrator file here. So I have these. I have this icon, and I'm creating different versions for all of the different, I guess, MIME types or file types. So we'll see how some of them are overlapping here. But basically. You know, I have a template here that I can generate all of the, I can put all of the different types into, and I can export this all in one go. My plan is to put these into the core miscellaneous icons and output them all in all the different colors that we have already in there, and then we'll have the appropriate ones for hover states. Or disabled states and things like that. My question, or one of my questions, I guess, is can somebody put together the list of all of the file types? Because I think that the one that we have in the issue is incomplete in terms of the
I'm not sure that we will be able to define a finite set of types to be supported, but it can certainly define, or it can certainly define a big set of files.
Yeah. If we could define what we think is the 80%, or roughly around there, then at least we have enough. And then if somebody wants to or needs to create another one at a future date, I will take this file and put it in a place where it's accessible to people, so that they can open up and actually change the text and output a new icon.
I actually have a thought on that. It's because these are SVGs. It seems possible that we might be able to generate them on the fly, given the template. We just somehow inject the letters SVG or whatever. To be able to display these things, and therefore we don't have to worry about making more icons because we just make the icons we need when we need them. I mean, I guess that's probably a little bit advanced, maybe more of a nice to have than a must have, but I just wanted to raise that as a possibility.
I think that's a really good idea, but like you said, I think it's a nice to have, and also I think it's something that we should think about doing more broadly for our icons in general, because that involves. Because there's other things that we would like to do programmatically, like having to take all the icons that we have in core right now and make different colored versions of them and put them in different file directories, I think is a little ridiculous. We should programmatically be just changing the CSS inside of the SVG file to have the color that it needs. So there's other things that we should be doing programmatically that would simplify and reduce the number of files in core.
Are you thinking of using color to distinguish the file types?
So that was another question. Actually, the ones that are in the PNGs that are being used in media right now are in different colors. This is problematic from the accessibility perspective because of color blindness. but also because you know, there's not necessarily, I mean, certain brands or companies have associated colors with certain file types, but they're by no means universally understood, and I don't think that they're necessarily going to help.
I would make one request, if I could. When all these icons are delivered, can we also get the template one where there's just, it's blank in the space where you have the file extension, so that way we at least have the ability to later just add on dynamic icon generation.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
This also raises another thing. Speaking of SVG support, there's a core issue. I can't remember what status it is. I opened it a while back. It's gone through several iterations from different people so that image formatter supports SVGs. And if we're going to bring SVG icons into core, it seems maybe that patch has become sort of imperative to get in. So I don't know who I can get to review that and sort of usher it through. It was RTBC. Alex Pott kicked it back with a pretty valid concern, which I addressed, and then I think it just kind of has stalled since then. So maybe that might be worth pursuing, getting RTBC, getting into core as soon as possible. I can share that later, Mike. I can share the link on there.
Yeah, maybe, but it's not a blocker right now. There already are SVG icons in core. The entire toolbar is SVG icons.
Okay.
So it's just that issue, I believe, is a different implementation of SVG icons.
Right. It comes up as a media thing because media may display image fields that may have SVGs for thumbnails or something like that. So that's why it's going to be right. It's like more of an icon API kind of approach, I think, or something like that. Yeah.
All right.
Which ultimately would be great if we had like an API where people could add, you know, like a better way to add icons that didn't involve hard coding every time.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna be that guy and say, apart from implementation details, what do we think about the design?
Well, I had a question already in the issue. Where will these icons be used? I think it also depends on context, on the size of the icon. If it's a list view, is it still readable, or are these used thumbnails?
Yeah, the icons. These icons are going to be used in the media library, where there is, I believe, as far as I understand from the designs in media library, they will be used where there is no thumbnail image. They will. The icon will be there instead of the thumbnail image, in the middle of the area where the file would be. They also can be used in other places in media library. You know, for example, and they can also be used in the file upload widget alongside of the file name.
Okay.
There are other places, but I can't think of them at the moment. But I know there are definitely other places where we can use them.
Yeah, I remember from 7 and media that we had some nice little icons that showed up if you had a download link, for example. And sometimes these were also used in the media browser, and they were completely blown up, and then yeah, it looked ridiculous.
Yeah, because they were GIFs or PNGs or something.
But I guess with SVG it will already be much better. But say, for example, the extension name, I don't know if it's still readable, if it's a very tiny icon.
Right, that's true. But at least there'll be between them, and they won't look bad.
Okay.
And are we expecting to have them in small sizes? Have you tried it then?
You don't. The SVG icons scale to any size. You don't need to necessarily have smaller or larger sizes.
The question remains, though: do they look well at smaller sizes?
Yeah,
especially
because they scale automatically.
No, but sometimes when you scale SVGs, they just move the lines to one pixel to another one.
Right.
That was the question.
Right. these ones I believe do scale very well. Let me share my screen again, and I can zoom out and show you. I think they're pretty good. If necessary, I could make the text larger in this area. I already made the font more condensed so that they could accommodate things like 4-letter extensions. I don't have an example of a 4-letter extension here yet, but in this group, but I can make the text larger, and I'll make sure that.
I guess you'll. Does this want to cover media types as in a tweet?
I think that that's not really the purpose of this set. I think that we have
focused on the MIME types.
Yeah, we focused on the MIME types. We could do that, but I feel like that's what we want to do there is just use the universally examples. Like if you have font awesome, you have the bird for Twitter, and you have the F for Facebook, and all those sort of the icons that are associated with the actual media source itself.
Okay, let's not spend too much time on icons.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
I mean,
Christina,
please go. But...
No, they did just that they look great, so that goes all.
They look. So we should go ahead with them, or do we still need to see them at smaller sizes and stuff like that?
I can put them up in the issue. I'll put them, a bunch of them up in the. There is an issue for this, which I can't remember the actual specific name of it or number of it, but I'll put them up in there so that people can see and review.
The number is 2833768.
It's linked in the Google chat here.
Oh, awesome! Perfect.
Thanks, everybody. So then we have some demos from the actual media team who's there in the ground in Berlin, right?
Yeah, so we have a media library demo from Sam. That was the next one.
Okay. You ready to go, Sam, or should we?
Yeah, he's about to.
Hold on.
Okay, sorry.
About to go.
No, it's okay.
Can you hear and see me okay?
Let's see here.
Yep.
Well, Gabor's not clicking on my. You have to
Not
actually
me.
click on mine because my mic.
He's
not
not
on.
speaking.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hangouts isn't that smart yet. So yeah, we started implementing the media library mockup. I'm kind of trying to get something MVP-like going. So what we have so far is basically the standalone page, which renders every media entity you have in a new view mode that's just called media library. And that allows you to administer media in the same way you would admin content, for example. So you can select media and perform bulk operations. You can search with contextual filters. You can search with expose filters. And it seems to be working so far. So a few things from the mockup from the top down on this page. One is there's a media tab now, as you would expect. In line with the other content entity types. The next set of sub-local tasks is dynamically generated based on every media bundle you have installed. So this is kind of a not realistic demo, but type 1 could say videos, type 2 could say files, etc. When you click on a tab, that sends you to a contextual filter that'll only show you media entities of that type. So you can kind of scope down the context you're administering media in. Next down is an add media button, which is the same as node add, takes you to the generic screen. Below that is normal expose filters. And then the bulk form. And then I added the hover and click effects from the mockup. So when you hover entities,
Nice.
it reveals the name. I changed the mockup on this a little by adding a background to the name because the name wasn't really visible if there was stuff behind it. So if you could imagine that this was an actual image in the square, it'd be very hard to read. So I added a background, and I still think it could be more readable, but there was no mockup for that. So there's that. When you click it, it adds the outline from the mockup and a check mark, and there's still hover styles, and you can select multiple things like you would normally and then perform an action. So that's what we have so far. And I can show what the mockup looks like if that helps for context.
Sure. Why not? Just for people who haven't seen it, maybe.
Yeah. So this was the mockup of the standalone page. It's fairly similar. I noted in one of the issues that some of the features that are implied here don't exist yet. Like you notice the expose filters don't have a button to actually submit. So I think that implies that there's autocomplete in core for views, which there isn't. So we don't have that right now, although it would be a nice to have in general. Then if you go to the mockup for browsing, you can see where I got the styles from for selections. So it's fairly similar. Yeah, so that is it so far.
So do you have anything in modal?
No, not yet, really. So the next thing we need to do is figure out how we use this in a field widget and what the experience is like of opening a modal that includes parts of this browser. And you can still select in the same way and submit and to get things in your ND reference field. So
looking forward to that one.
Yeah.
So
nice progress.
Are those all of the things that do you have other things that you're demoing? You want to hear comments?
Oh, I'm done demoing. So if you have comments
of the library, yes, we have other things demoed from media, but not from the library.
Okay, cool. So I just had one comment, which is that the date, the timestamp, and the user. If I understand the intent of the original design, it's that all meta information would go in that bottom drawer that now just contains the file name.
Yes, I agree. So the way this is set up right now is every media bundle has a new view mode that they can provide, a template for in CSS for by default, or themes can override that. So what you're looking at now is what it looks like completely unstyled with no customizations. So I think what we would do is that when we introduce media library, we would actually provide templates in CSS for known bundles. So we would make sure that image looks good and document looks good. But right now, everything except what's in this bottom section is just view mode. So.
We can provide a default view mode though, right? That overrides things.
Yeah, yes, we can do whatever we want to make individual bundles look good. This is actually a test bundle, so it wouldn't even be exposed to users. But once I start working on the image and document feature, I'll make sure that the library looks closer to the mockup. So.
Right, but what I'm saying is that globally,
yes.
all of the information, it seems to me that all of the informational stuff, that's the other fields, should go in the bottom drawer, and only the icon should be visible in the square.
So on hover, you would want the name, date, and the user?
Yep.
Okay, that may be
if that's
quite tall.
I think if we create a default config that that gives us our shortest date, right? Then that's going to be certainly less than what you see there, or even time ago. Then that's going to be taking up a lot less space. But I definitely think all that stuff needs to go in that bottom drawer. That's the intent of that design, as far as I can see, is that fields of information go down there, and that and the fact that it opens up, or the fact that it reveals itself only when you hover it, is, you know, it means that it could come up halfway or even, you know, 3/4 of the way, and it's still not going to hurt anything because you just hover off if you want to see the full icon or the full thumbnail.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with that. And in another browser I worked on, we included like things like file size and resolution for images. So it could be that we need to find a way for bundles to provide relevant information there too. So that's all good stuff to think about.
Right. Cool. Yeah, it looks great.
I think it may also be a bit strange for a themer who would want to change it, that he has to do two different things. One part for in the drawer and the other part for the rest.
Yes, we could put, yeah, we could actually make everything in the template if that's preferable. Right now, this is a view, and there's one field for the rendered entity and one for, you know, what's in the tray. And if you think it would be better for themers to have everything in the template for the view mode, that's totally acceptable at this phase.
Yeah, I guess that would be nice, because then you have just everything in that blue square. You can do something with it.
Yeah, I would do that. I'll take that in.
I have another question. What happens with links inside the view mode?
Yeah, so they aren't, the event isn't overridden, so they'll actually follow. So I haven't covered that yet. I'm not sure what is expected, basically.
I think that is something we should discuss, because it can be quite, well, interesting for people who assume to select something, but then they navigate away.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm already providing JavaScript for the checkbox, the hidden checkbox behaviors that are happening here. So I can, in that, prevent the default click as well. So that's fine.
Is there a reason we render them as links at all? I mean, I guess it's the default, right?
Yeah.
Should we just not render links?
That's, I think because it's a view mode, we don't know how it's being rendered, but we in JavaScript can definitely prevent defaults and stop propagation like normal.
From the server side, it's hard to absolutely prevent things from being rendered out as links, because anything you can cause in Drupal can be overridden later, pretty much. But in JavaScript, it can be a lot harder to.
Yeah, it's okay to do it in the front end. I'm just thinking, can we define as the principle that no links are rendered? Is that useful?
I think if you stop the event, you shouldn't render it as a link. So.
Yeah,
right. Yeah. You don't want it to be blue if the event has been stopped.
Yep. So there's two things I can think of to do. One is to document this well in the template and make sure that people know that when they are styling this view mode, that links are not going to be followable. And the more complicated thing would be to document it and to do something else with JavaScript to remove anchor tags within the square.
Could unwrap them and replace them with spans.
Yeah, there's many options. So it depends how deep you want to go. I don't know.
This is not your first priority.
Yes.
Also not an implementation meeting, it's a UX meeting.
Yeah. So, yeah, this is cool though. It's definitely coming along great.
Are there any specific questions that you need feedback on, or is just this is the status and checking along? I
have a few questions about the mockup, but I think the most pertinent now is about creation of new media. So there's two parts of these mockups. One is this add new items section, and I don't want to discuss like specifically what's in the mockup because there's issues about that, but this prototype and then this one, and let's see, this one says after drag and drop file browse upload. it implies that there's some sort of form about adding new media within the modal, but then there is this mockup, which kind of implies that you can directly drop files onto the field widget. So I'm just wondering what the expected behavior is and what the expectations are with these mockups. So just to start, from this mockup, what do you expect to happen when I drag a file onto this drop zone area?
So first of all, I think it was commented in one of the issues that there is another design. There is a design for file upload widget that we should be following. We should wait for the file upload widget design or thing to land and build on top of that. And it's actually pretty close, that issue. But I think your question is slightly different.
Yeah, that has the same elements like this. It's just a different layout and different design. But it's still, so what does that do is when you drag something into this drag zone, then it starts a throbber and starts an upload, and then the image appears in the field. And I don't think that's what we intend to do here, because then we need to inline display all the entity metadata form, like every data that you can enter about the media. So the question is, do we expect like an inline form to show up here suddenly to provide your data for whatever you uploaded, or do we expect the modal to open to continue the flow, or what do we expect?
Well, I think it would be nice if you have the same kind of behavior. Say, if you drag and drop it, then you would see the pop-up, because if you open the media browser, you would have the same kind of view. I think it's nice to have the same experience in both cases.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great answer, because it's way easier to implement than the other things we were talking about. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it should be consistent. That makes sense.
Yeah, trying to inline the form is much harder to do. We don't have inline entity forms in core, so.
We should, but we don't.
I have another tiny question. Maybe it shouldn't be addressed here, but often I see very small drop zones or suggestions of drop zones. I think if we have drop zones anywhere, they should be big enough, because it shouldn't be a game to really get the image in a small area.
Yeah, the file field design issue has that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Could you link it somewhere?
Yeah,
it's linked in the chat.
Right. Thanks.
Linked in the chat.
It's a chat.
That's definitely bigger. It's like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like it activates visually when you drop something there, and yeah, all of that stuff.
So that brings up another question to me that I was wondering how you guys are going to deal with this particular patch, which is do we intend to do anything with article content type in this particular patch? In other words, so there's kind of two things that could happen, right? You could, or three really. You could leave the file upload for the image in article as it is, right? We could kill the file upload in image in article as it is and replace it with just browse library, or media image upload, or we could add it, or we could try to combine the two into one. I think it's going to be weird to allow people, once media entity is in core, to randomly upload files that do not go into the media library.
Are you talking about the current image field on the article?
I'm talking about the current image field upload on article, yes.
Right, which does not create a media item.
It feels wrong.
When the whole media entity story is ready and approved, it can change the standard profile to stop using image fields and uses media resolution instead.
Yeah, as long as the media library and/or the media entity is not stable, we cannot do that, right? Because then we would push experimental modules on standard profile, which is a big no-no. But once we stabilize everything around media, then we can do that. Yes, that's the plan. Yes. So it's not going to happen very soon, but it's going to happen.
But there isn't. But as long as there's an open issue that we know, replace this with the media upload widget. I think that works.
I believe this was discussed in that plan part, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was discussed.
Yeah, it's not there's not a special issue for exactly this part, changing the standard profile, because we're not very close to that yet.
Yeah.
But it was discussed as part of the general plan. So
Okay.
I guess that's
Awesome.
So speaking of media entity, should we take a look at that one, or?
Yes.
Yeah, I tried to set up a demo and I failed because the two versions of the patch that I found, one of them doesn't have much UI to show and the other one it has an older version of media entity, but I can show at least the start of it, and then in the meantime we can figure out if somebody else has a media entity module with an image widget or something that makes it more interesting. But
I have the contrips installed, yes.
Yeah, but
that doesn't count.
Okay. So there's a lot of change that happened today. Are you seeing my screen? I think you are.
I have the patch at 75 running in Simply Test Me.
Yeah, so what we have in the main media entity patch is we have a media entity module which is stable in the patch. So that's one thing that we want to highlight, is that the proposal is to introduce this as stable because it manages data. It now has a reasonable module description that it didn't have before. And when you go to permissions, the permission names now make sense. So there were some concerns with the permission names before, so it's actually pretty clear now, like which permission means what. So you know what you are granting. And then the structure page now has media types.
Hey.
Types. So
Okay,
yeah.
let's see.
Okay, I see that.
It just failed the test, I'm sorry to say.
Yeah,
So we're
it's
gonna have
failed.
hold on. Let's just wonder, I think it was a random.
So we now have media types. Obviously the page title is still not perfect because the whatever list generator issue that puts the entities here. Well, we know that problem from the workflow module. And we now have inline way to add a media type here, so you can do it both ways. And when you add a media type, then we now call this a handler. Thank you, Kevin O'Leary. Yeah. This used to be a type, and this used to be the bundle, so we now have a type and now have a handler. And we don't have the mapping details and anything else displayed by default unless you pick a handler. And we don't have the dummy handler anymore. So this is where my demo is going to stop because I don't have neither the image, neither the document handler. But we don't have the dummy handler anymore because the dummy handler didn't actually do any useful thing to your media. And we sort of discussed the usefulness of it was called the generic handler. And it's probably only useful for media where you only have text fields. Like if you want to have media which are like quotes from famous people, pull quotes, then you would use that, but we consider it's not an 80% use case. It was not part of the goal of the initiative to have pull quote support as part of the media library and have thumbnails for pull quotes. No. And since we are planning to ship with image and document and YouTube video support as handlers, we don't need to have a dummy handler that's not an 80% use case. So what I cannot demo is that we also solve the problem of the source field. So the problem we had before, so I have an older version of this here. This is not the latest version, basically. It says type provider and bundle everything. But the problem we've had is when you pick the image provider, then it says filled with source information because it needs to store the image somewhere. And this used to say that you can populate it after the fields are added. So you save this, and then you add an image field, and then you come back, and then you pick the image field, and then you're happy because you now have the image field. And we solved this today. So the current patch is able to provide you with an image field without needing to go anywhere else. So just it defaults to creating a new field for you, and it knows what type of field it needs to create, so you don't need to do anything there. We thought about hiding the whole thing entirely, the source field, but we did not do that because we figured out that possibly reusing fields from other bundles may be a use case if you have multiple image types, different types of images. Then you would use the same field to store the source for consistency, for easier views, building, whatever. But it defaults to creating a new field for you unless you pick something else. So it's going to be a select box that defaults to creating a new field. And then there's field mappings, and we are also working on being able to automatically create any of these fields if you want them. And I think we plan to default all of them to not be created, but you can pick them to be automatically created or reuse an existing field as well. So that's the current plan. I think those are all the changes that we made.
Yeah, and I think this field mapping wasn't updating if you changed the provider.
Yeah.
So we're also updating that now.
Yeah. Oh, and there was with images, there was this funky option to enable the EXIF data parsing, and it was a drop-down, and the usability review turned out that the drop-down for yes, no is silly. So we wanted to make it a checkbox, and then we figured out that we don't need to make it a checkbox because it's not an actual user choice. It depends on whether PHP supports your EXIF data parsing or not. If your PHP does not support that, then we don't offer the option. If it supports it, then we don't offer the option either, because we just offer the fields from the EXIF data here in the field mapping. So if your PHP is more intelligent, then you get more fields. And if it's not, then you don't get more fields, and that's it. So as once again, this is not the latest screen that we have, but I don't have the combined patch with the latest entity module and the latest image and document providers, which we are working on. So I think that's what we did here. So feedback welcome.
That looks great.
I don't.
Provider and document provider are not.
So we don't have the image and the document provider re-rolled for the latest patch version of media entities, so that's why I cannot show you the automated creation of the source field, but we do have that. You can try it, yeah. If you have a
probably need to hang out.
like Sam can leave the hangout, I think.
Hello, dude.
And then Marcus is going to join and show us that. And in the meantime, we are looking for feedback.
Yeah, happy to see the changes being made. I especially happy that the source field at least will be magically created.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in discussing earlier today, we basically figured the whole field mapping for the metadata. Redesigning that bit, removing most of it by being able to create those fields automatically or whatever, is not necessarily part of the MVP. So we can postpone on that, but let's have an issue for that somewhere so that we can look into it. I think that was the main crux of the feedback I provided. I'm not sure about any other open standing issues. The main provider field automatically is super great, and metadata mapping, fine to follow up on, I think. I do have the sketches I made earlier today if people want to understand the problem, but that's to fill the time to watch the mini demo.
We watched the video that you recorded,
Okay.
and you proposed to have checkboxes for creating the metadata fields. And I think what we arrived at is similar to what we have for the source field, is that we would so for reusability's sake, reusing existing fields, it would be better to have a select box and have an option to create the field for you, but also have an option to ignore the field, the metadata field, or reuse an existing field.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of a checkbox, we would have more options, but we would have the functionality that you are proposing with the checkbox will be implemented, but it will be behind a select box, not a checkbox.
I am happy. I understand what you're saying. I'm not sure other people in this call are following.
Wow.
I think I'm following. I'm following what you're saying, Gabriel. That makes sense. Yeah, I mean, my first inclination was hide all of them, and under one single big checkbox that says, do you want to customize your metadata or not? But I think that might be too much hiding things away. If somebody's creating a new entity type here, they're at least they're not a novice.
Yeah. So we have Marcus here with hopefully demo.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
So my Hangout icon as well. Here, before creating a new media type, as soon as we enable the module, some default types are going to be present. And in this case, we have the document present. This would be the equivalent of the article or page node types. The document and the image ones are already going to be present. And that's what we are seeing here. So when we create a new one, now the handler has it's going to have the document and the image options by default. And then when we select it, we're going to have this create option for the field with source information.
So that will auto create the field.
Yeah.
The right type of field that's required for documents.
In this case, I also have the option to reuse an existing field that was, in this case, created automatically on module install.
Can you zoom in on your browser a bit?
No. Okay.
Well, the regular text zoom, the view menu. You zoom.
Yeah,
Control plus.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So I don't know if you see, this is the existing field that was created on the module install. But if I don't want to use it, if I want to create a new one, and then when I edit it,
Okay. Oh, cool. Yeah.
That's the idea. You don't need to come back here and select the field again, and well, you don't have to create a field and then come back to the edit page and then save the form again. All this is done in the same create operation.
Yeah, so that's for the source field, and for the rest of the metadata fields, we would have the same pattern. But I think we wanted to default them to ignore instead of create, I believe.
Yeah, I think so.
That's what the media developers believe to be the best choice based on experience.
Okay, maybe this is not necessarily related to the specific thing we were just talking about, But on save of this form,
yep.
When this form is submitted, I think that the behavior should follow the behavior of of content type forms and immediately reroute the user to manage fields. Anyway.
I agree. Why not?
Yep.
Because they're not necessarily going to know what to do next.
Yeah. I agree.
Are there two buttons on node type forms? On save and continue?
Save and add fields. Yeah.
Well, the node type form just says save and manage fields. So it would be the same pattern here.
Yeah.
It would be the submit button would say save and manage fields.
Yeah, we can do that. So we also call the module media entity. Is that a good idea? Or should it be called media or something?
Media would be great.
Can we have the media namespace?
We don't.
No. So media is a totally different module in Drupal 8. That's the problem.
Media.
Because I thought that media wasn't anywhere in Drupal 8.
No, there was a Google Summer of Code project this summer. Then there's a
dang.
very successful
students
student.
actually doing things.
I like Roy's suggestion.
Media. Or a media.
Yeah, media management. I don't know, something.
I had suggested multimedia.
Yeah.
I guess Kevin didn't like that because that sounds like who that was. But yeah, that was my original suggestion, just so we don't have to fight with the media namespace.
Possible. Multimedia. Yeah, do you download that from cyberspace?
The only place people are going to see media the only place people are going to see this string is in the module, is in the extend UI.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be terse. Media management is fine.
Yeah,
well,
media management.
Machine name needs to be somewhat terse. And the machine name is actually the problem that you're going to run into, because like the human visible name won't cause you problems. It's the machine name that's going to cause.
Well, there's all kinds of there's locale module. It's called the interface translation on the UI, so they can do things. The outside in module is called settings tray on the UI.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Is the actual human readable name is simple to change after the fact. It's the machine name that we want to do a little bit of bike shedding on, because that's a lot. And that's the actual thing that's going to cause the problem.
Yeah, we also have
machine names part of the UX meeting.
Yeah, no. We also have 8 minutes left, so we either want to wrap this up if there are no other concerns, or we will go over time.
I was wondering, the media library we saw earlier, is that will that be a separate module in core?
So the proposal is to have, so this module media that's currently called media entity will be stable and will include the image and document plugins, handler plugins. And, so you only need to enable one module to be able to save them, and it can ship with configuration for those or whatever. And there's going to be a media library, which we think will be experimental at first and will be a separate module. There's definitely not any time loading to be stable, but we believe that the media entity module would ideally be best to be committed as stable, because it handles a lot of data. It's like a base entity type. And it's hard to argue to have it as an experimental if we want people to move over to that.
Right.
Yeah, I asked just to understand about the naming issue, if medium, if we call it a media manager, if that creates the expectation that there's actually
Exactly.
a library included.
Yeah.
Well, and the problem is not media library. The problem is media entity, right? Which doesn't do any management of any media. It just stores shit in the database and on the file system.
Yes.
Right.
So in chat, I suggested assets, but I think we should go to Slack and bike
Yeah,
shed.
it's not for you,
Right.
but it's an open question. Okay.
Yeah. But I think Roy's point is good.
Yeah, we removed the listing of media from this module, so there's no listing anymore built in because it's going to be provided by the library. So it's one of the things that is not existent anymore. It was part of the UX review, the listing, but it's not there anymore.
Yeah, media storage.
All right. So we have 5 minutes left. Could we quickly, I don't see Ted in here, so Kevin, would you be able to show your idea for how we reconcile? So the backstory here is place block module, the module we put in Drupal in 8.2. It was pretty close to being done. There's like 3 things left to get it to stable. So we would like to get it to at least beta by 8.3. And one of the main things that is a blocker is the idea of weighting things once you've put them on the page. And so Kevin wanted to run this idea past.
Right. So we have this patch, right, which is is close to being done or committed, which combines the block place module with settings tray and enables this behavior where you click to add a block and then you see your blocks, right? But in this instance, if I then go and place a block, what happens, and the same thing happens if I don't have settings tray, is that I'm taken to, so if I place a block, then I configure the block. This needs to be styled, obviously. And then I save, and then I'm taken to the block UI, which is suboptimal. So the prototype that I have is basically here. Are people seeing this?
Yes.
Yep.
So the prototype is just and actually there's a missing step. There's the missing configuration step, but you can imagine that that what happens is this, and after the configuration step, is that I get the blocks that are in that region, and then I can drag, drop, and then save. And so I have weighting. It's not a complete drag drop block solution, but it gets around the weighting problem in a way that is, that is minimally viable and allows people to have a full place block without going to an administrative page experience. So Ted is working on a patch for that right now, which Ted's patch, what it does is it puts the standard modal that you get in block UI right now, which looks like this. So if I go to block UI, this kind of modal, and then if I were to add a block, configure, and then save, it would open up it would keep the same modal and give me the table drag there. The combination of the 2 patches together will give the experience you just saw in my prototype, where I decide that I want to place a block. I place the block. I configure the block, and then I get this, and then I save, and my block is in place. Does that all make sense?
It does. Do we need to have a word in there that says something like sort, or we don't, right? We rely on that cross icon.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point. Maybe perhaps what is the what would the modal say right now, or what would the page say right now in the page? So here, if I were to do this, I can go like that, and then save. I get, puts me back here, and it just puts me in block. It just puts me in block layout. But block layout at least has some kind of link, you know, sent that this is like I'm laying things out and moving things around. Maybe it should be just layout header. You know, I think the region name should be there. These are the blocks in that region.
Though, like,
I think layout is a bit ambitious though. Like you can
rearrange.
Like, it shows up vertically or horizontally in a region, and that's it. So layout is probably a bit ambitious.
Yeah.
Because then, like, where's my 3-column layout, and where's my, you know?
Yeah.
I want 3 columns in my header. Oh.
Arrange blocks in header seems kind of wordy.
yeah, I was thinking header region, and then there'd be a heading 1 or something under between the thing with the pencil and then the table. Rearrange blocks.
It says drag blocks or arrange your blocks.
Or, yeah, arrange or yeah, something.
Yeah, I don't want to invent problems, but maybe.
But in Slack, Brian is saying that apply and save, having both, are confusing. That they both indicate something one has to do to get it to show up. So if what we mean by apply is preview, we probably don't need a preview for the MVP anyway.
Yeah, that's because I just took this from another design that introduces this pattern. I'm not suggesting we introduce this pattern here. It's just
so that could just be a save button, and
yeah, it would just be a save.
Okay.
So yeah.
So I'm not hearing anyone say, "For the love of God, don't implement that." So that's good.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's
maybe need like a little bit of tweaking just to make it more clear what's actually happening there. But that's mostly just wording changes, and those are easy.
No,
Yeah, I think
great.
it's a good interim step until we get to a point where people can actually drag and drop on the page.
Yeah, I think so too. Because we were going to just expose the weight field, but then Kevin was like, "That's not really MVP. That's kind of like the shittiest thing you can possibly do. So maybe we should do something where you're actually dragging and dropping." And so this seemed like a good compromise in that we can reuse existing patterns. We don't have to like reinvent all of the wheels. So it should be pretty easy to put a patch together for this, and then yeah, we can tweak the wording and the titles and stuff in the.
We already have the table drag working nicely in the settings tray for menu items. So.
We do, yeah. So good on us for solving that problem before. So we can just whatever we're doing there, we'll just copy and paste it. I could maybe even write that patch. Ooh, anyway.
All right.
That won't get crazy.
Cool.
All right, sweet.
No, that's.
And also, we have one that we can commit right now.
Well, we can't right now because it's one.
I mean, not
I
right
have to
now,
do that on
but
another call, but I'll be around later today. Hey, but real quick, could someone drop me a link to RTPC issues from the sprint on Friday? Because I know of one of them and I didn't get around to committing it over the weekend, but I'm happy to spend some hardcore time in the RTPC queue probably tomorrow.
Okay.
And I'd love to get people unblocked. So, or if there's stuff in the media sprint too, I'm happy to look at that stuff too.
Right.
Yeah, one of our blockers got committed today, so we are good so far, I think.
Okay.
Are you guys still seeing my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
This is the patch that I was talking about. Before, it used to look like that. Look at the Ajax throbber there, ugly, sticking to the side, shoving the thing out of the way. And the patch looks like this.
Ooh, that's so better.
Fix it in the middle. Very nice. So that's it.
I mean, it's a little goofy, but that definitely looks better than it was. So hooray, that's great.
So the plus button like starts animating.
Oh, that's really good. Yep. Okay, thanks. Yeah, I should be able to look at that. If not later today, I'm kind of running out of time today, but probably tomorrow. So
cool.
Great.
Thanks all. Go team.
Thank you. Woohoo!
Nice work.
Yay, thank you.
Hey.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
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 Bye, everyone.